This week, we're learning the Sikha for Parshas Tetzaveh, Sikha from Tovshin and Beis. In Sefer HaSichas Tovshin and Beis, there's actually two Sikhas for Parshas Tetzaveh, so we're learning the first one. The Sikha could be found in Sefer HaSichas Tovshin and Beis, Chelik Beis, page 394. And the Rebbe starts off by saying that Parshas Tetzaveh is the only Parsha in the Torah after Moshe Rabbeinu was born on Zayin Adar Rishon, Parsha which does not have Moshe Rabbeinu's name specified in the Parsha. And we find two general reasons why it is that Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned in Parshas Tetzaveh. The first reason given is that since Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Zayin Adar Rishon, so there is a hint for the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away in the Parsha of the Torah that we always read close to the Zman, close to the time of his Histalkus. So since Parshas Tetzaveh is always read or often read right next to Zayin Adar, since Zayin Adar Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, so there's a remes for that by not mentioning Moshe Rabbeinu's name. A second reason given is Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Eibishter, V'im ayin mecheni na mesifrecha. Moshe Rabbeinu said to the Eibishter, when the Eibishter wanted to chas v'sholem destroy the Yidden, Moshe Rabbeinu asked for the forgiveness for the Yidden, and he said, and if not, erase me from the Sefer that you have written. Since we know that a klala, that a curse of a chacham, of a tzaddik, even if it's made on condition, and the condition didn't end up taking place, nevertheless the curse comes to be in some way or other. So therefore, even though the Eibishter gave in to Moshe Rabbeinu's request, so in other words, the condition didn't actually take place, and the Eibishter didn't destroy the Yidden, nevertheless, the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu said, erase my name from the Torah, that did end up happening, at least in regards to one parsha of the Torah, and that's Parshas Tetzaveh. So the Rebbe says we need to understand, we need clarification in both of these reasons. Regarding the reason that we say that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Zayin Adar, so the question is, we know that even though Moshe Rabbeinu passed away on Zayin Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu was also born in Zayin Adar. In fact, the Gemara says this in connection to the fact that Moshe Haman made a gzeira and he was happy that his goyrel, the lottery that he made, had fallen out in the month that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. He didn't realize that Moshe Rabbeinu was also born then. And as the Chazal tell us, and Rashi explains, that Kedayu Haleda, Kedayu Yoim Haleda, that the birth is so great that it wipes away the effect, the negative effect of that which Misa, of the passing away. So if that's the case, why is it that the Torah is hinting on the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away by not mentioning his name, rather than mentioning the fact that he was born, which wipes away any trace and any effect of the negative aspect of the fact that he passed away? Says the Rebbe regarding the second reason. The second reason that we said is that Moshe Rabbeinu himself said, erase me from your Sefer. So the question is like this. Since Moshe Rabbeinu said this, after the story with the Chet HaEgel, after Shivas or B'Tammuz, with the story of the breaking of the Luchis and so on, the Torah records this whole story in the Parsha that's after Parshas Tetzaveh. It's Parshas Kisisa. So why is it that the fulfillment of this klala, of this curse in a sense, ends up being discussed in Parshas Tetzaveh? Which, yes, of course, it's close to Zayin Adar, but it's being discussed in Parshas Tetzaveh before the story is even told in Parshas Kisisa. And the question is even stronger according to the opinions, that in the order of the Torah, Parshas Tetzaveh in fact did happen before Chet HaEgel, meaning to say it's not only recorded in the Torah before Chet HaEgel, but it also happened before Chet HaEgel. So how then does it make sense that Moshe Rabbeinu's name should be erased, specifically in a Parsha that's even before the story of the Chet HaEgel? The Rebbe asks in Seif Gimel, we also need to understand the connection between these two reasons. Since they are both reasons for the same thing, it makes sense that there is some sort of connection in between them. In other words, the two ideas of Moshe Rabbeinu's passing on Zayin Adar, as well as the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu asking for his name to be erased from the Torah. Says the Rebbe in Seif Beis, we can understand all of this by first explaining the very great advantage and quality that happens to the month of Adar because Moshe Rabbeinu was born on Zion Adar. And the Rebbe explains in more detail something that we just mentioned a moment ago. Regarding Chodesh Adar, the Gemara says that when Haman's lottery fell out on Chodesh Adar, Haman was very, very happy because he said that the lottery had fallen out in the month that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. So in other words, he's focusing on the fact that it was the month that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. He didn't realize that on the 7th of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, and on the 7th of Adar, he was also born. So in other words, the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th of Adar, it has an impact and it transforms the whole month of Adar, as the Megillah says, HaChodesh Asher Nepach, the whole month was transformed into a month of happiness. As in fact, as the Gemara says, Mishen Nichnas Adar, as soon as Adar comes in, already Marbim B'Simcha, we're already increasing in happiness. Also, as the Gemara says, that the month of Adar has a special Bori Mazli, especially special healthy and strong mazel. In other words, we find these unique things regarding Chodesh Adar that we don't find in regards to the rest of the months of the year. And the Rebbe asks, from the words of the Gemara, it seems to be that the birth of Moshe has the power to remove, to get rid of the negative things that happen in this month, which is that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, and that's exactly why Haman was happy. So from that we see, in other words, that there was something negative. Haman didn't realize there was also something positive. So it seems to be that now we're back to square one, so to speak. So the question is, why is it a reason that this month should be a happier month than all other months of the year? In other words, yes, there was something negative, there was something positive, and now, l'cha'ira, there's no reason for it to be a greater, happier month than the rest of the months of the year, speaking, of course, before Purim takes place. The Rebbe says this question becomes even stronger looking at the Medrashim of Chazal regarding the Goyrel of Haman. And the Medrash relates as follows. When Haman or Rasha wanted to destroy the Yidden, he says, how am I going to be able to get my power over them? How am I going to be able to overcome them? I'm going to be throwing lotteries. And the Medrash goes on to say how he goes through the various different months. He starts with Chodesh Nisan and he realizes there's the schools of Pesach. And he thinks about the Chodesh Iyar and he realizes that there's what's called over here Pesach Katan, or we call it Pesach Sheni. And he goes through the various different qualities and merits of all the other 11 months. Until Chodesh Adar comes along, and Haman says, Chodesh Adar doesn't have any schusim. Chodesh Adar doesn't have any merits. Then Haman starts looking at the mazolos, at the various different signs in the heavens, the configuration of the stars called the mazolos, and he says, we have the first one as Mazel Tleh, of the sheep, which is in Chodesh Nisan. Well, that's the sheep of Pesach, so once again a schus of the Korban Pesach, once again a schus for the Yidden. You have one of the mazolos is the mazel of the shoyer, of the ox. That's Yosef is compared to an ox. Once again a schus. And again he goes through all the different mazolos, these different configurations of the stars and the planets and so on, of all the 11 months of the year, till finally he comes to Mazel Dogim, the mazel of the month of Adar. And here he looks at Dogim and he says, this doesn't seem to have any zchus, any sort of merit. Immediately Haman was so excited and he's so happy, and he says, Adar doesn't have a schus. The mazel doesn't have a schus. Not only that, Moshe Rabbeinu, their Rebbe, passed away in the month of Adar. So this is why he's so excited. This seems to be his lucky month. Haman didn't realize that really in Adar Moshe Rabbeinu passed away, but he was also born there. He born then. Just to note over here, there's various different gersois on the date of Adar. The Rebbe discusses it in the footnotes. I'm not going to go into that right now. But Haman said that just like fish swallow each other, I will swallow the Yidden. Said the Eibishter Rasha, fish sometimes get swallowed and sometimes swallow. But this time, you, Haman that is, you are going to become one of those that are going to be swallowed by the fish. So all of this seems to be emphasizing even more that what Moshe Rabbeinu's birth achieved was just taking away any negative trace of the fact that he passed away in this month. Similar to the idea of fish, which is, Haman thought that he is going to swallow the other fish, so to speak, the Yidden. But nevertheless, as Hashem tells him, sometimes they get swallowed, sometimes they swallow. So in other words, technically speaking, the month still remains a time that there is no schus, and that the mazel doesn't have a schus. It is only in this case, Haman was wrong, and because of Moshe Rabbeinu's birth, it's going to take away the negative impact of his passing, and the Yidden are going to come out on top this time. But surely it does not seem like Adar in any way is still greater and better than all the rest of the months of the year. So the Rebbe explains in Seif Gimel, based on a famous concept, that on the birthday of a person, the birthday of a Yid, so his mazel is especially strong on that day, assisting him and helping him and so on. The concept is called mazoloi goiver. The mazel of the day is helping the person and assisting him. To use the words of a pasuk, v'govar Yisrael, that the Yidden become strong and overpower and so on. If that's the case, when we speak about the Yom Ledes, the birthday of Moshe Rabbeinu, which Moshe, who Yisrael, Moshe represents all of the Yidden. Moshe is all the Yidden, and all the Yidden are Moshe. We know the concept that the Nasi Hadoir is like the whole generation, and Hanasi Hu HaKoil, the Nasi is everything. If that's the case, so the Yom Ledes of the Nasi is the Mazoloi Goiver of all of the Yidden. In other words, every Yid's birthday is Mazoloi Goiver. His mazel is especially strong. The Yom Ledes of the Nasi, the mazel of all the Yidden are especially strong. And of course, this is true not only regarding Moshe Rabbeinu himself, but since there is this Pashtusa the Moshe, there is an extension of Moshe Rabbeinu in every generation. So this is true also with the leaders of the Yidden, with the Moshe Rabbeinus of all generations. Says the Rebbe, if that's the case, we can now understand regarding the special mazel of the month that Moshe Rabbeinu was born in. Since we said Moshe Rabbeinu, Hu Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu embodies all of the Yidden. So that's now going to help the mazel of the month, that all the Yidden's mazel should be strong in this month. And that's exactly the pshat of what the Gemara says, that Adar has especially strong and healthy mazel. In other words, because Moshe Rabbeinu was born on the 7th day of the month of Adar, this causes that the whole month should have bari mazlei, should have a strong and healthy mazel. Says the Rebbe, based on this, we can now understand what the Medrash means when it says that Haman didn't realize that on Zayin Adar Moshe Rabbeinu was born. So what is the Medrash actually saying? This is actually in response to what the Medrash originally said, that Haman thought that Adar doesn't have a schus and doesn't have a mazel. So what the Medrash is now coming along and saying, that the month of Adar doesn't need a special schus and a special mazel, as is the case with all the other months that needed some sort of special schus and a special mazel, the mazel of Pesach, and so on. Why is that? Because the month of Adar has something so much greater than the regular zechusim, so to speak, of the month itself. We have over here that the mazel of the Yidden are especially strong, because this is the time that Moshe Rabbeinu was born, which in a sense is the birth of all of the Yidden. He is born in the month of Adar, and this causes a special help for the Yidden, and a special help for the mazel of this Chodesh, that the mazel of the Yidden should be especially strong, even though the Chodesh itself, the month itself, seems to have no particular mazel. Says the Rebbe in Siv Dalet, V'yesh loymar, the fact, the Rebbe says, we could say, the fact that the mazel of the Yidden is especially strong in Chodesh Adar because of the birth of Moshe, this is also noticeable in the fact that which month gets a double of it in a leap year, like the year the Rebbe was saying the Sikha, which month is the one that gets 2 of the month? That is, the double month is Chodesh Adar. 2 months together, 60 days. And it is specifically the month of Adar that helps to align and to synchronize the lunar year and the solar year, to align them, to make that any days missing in the lunar year should now be able to be filled up. And in fact, when we have a leap year, it's called a Shana Tamima, it's called a complete year. Now it became even bigger than the solar year. And the Rebbe explains, because generally we know that the months of the year, we count according to the moon, the lunar year. That's because Yidden are specifically connected to the moon, and we count our months according to the moon. And we are going to be renewed like the moon. Whereas the Goyim count and are similar to the sun. And therefore, says the Rebbe, that it is specifically the month of Adar, the month that has a especially strong muzzle of the Yidden. This is the one that makes that the lunar year should be that much stronger and that much more powerful, for, first of all, again, aligning with the solar year, and in a sense, becoming even a bigger year than the solar year. And the Rebbe explains this in more detail. The Rebbe says, number one, when we have an Adar in a leap year, so this includes 2 months. In other words, that when we say that there's the chidush of the moon, when the moon is being renewed in the month of Adar, and we said that when the moon is renewed, it really represents the renewal of the Yidden. Now, since there's a double Adar, what it means is a double strength of renewal for the Yidden. Point number one. Point number two, when we have the double Adar, we have 60 days of Adar. This hints to the idea of being mevatel, of nullifying all negative things in 60. It means we know the concept that in food, so there's an idea of batel b'shishim, when a forbidden food gets mixed in with a permissible food, and there's 60 times as much, so then the forbidden food becomes completely nullified. So in other words, when we have 60 days of Adar, this represents that we have the koyach now to nullify all negative things, and they are all transformed into good. And similar to by food, that we say from the negative food or from the forbidden food, now that itself became kosher. In a similar way, all the negative things are now becoming, so to speak, able to be consumed by the Yid, to become part of the Yid. All the negative things are becoming transformed into good, or similar to a lashon that the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, when you take sharp things, hot things, spicy things, and they're prepared well, that they themselves can now revive the person. So we have this advantage of transforming something negative into something positive and sweet. And finally, says the Rebbe, most importantly, that through the Chodesh Adar we now get the shleimus of the lunar year, where it's becoming equal and synchronized with the solar year, which, as we said, also is a hint to the time when Mashiach will come. When we say that the light of the moon is going to be as great as the light of the sun, and 7 times as great as the light the way it was originally when the Eibishter created the world, which is of course all going to be when Mashiach comes, when the Yidden too will be renewed just like the moon. So in other words, just to summarize the last few points, what the Rebbe is saying is that specifically because Chodesh Adar has a especially healthy mazel, because Moshe Rabbeinu being born in this month, this is exactly why Chodesh Adar has all of these amazing things. First of all, again, the double Adar, which also represents a double birth and a double strength of the Yidden. The idea of 60 days, which is mevatel, nullifies all negative things, transforming them into positive. And furthermore, the idea of the moon becoming equal to the sun, as it's going to be when Mashiach comes. Says the Rebbe, all of this is even more emphasized when Rosh Chodesh Adar Rishon, the year that the Rebbe is saying the Sikha, was on Tuesday and Wednesday the 3rd and 4th day of the week. And the Rebbe explains the significance of each of these. Yom Shlishi, the 3rd day of the week, we know, in the beginning of creation, this is the day that it says twice Ki Tov. And in fact, it's not only twice Ki Tov for this day itself, it's also coming to fix up and to correct anything negative from the previous day where it doesn't say Ki Tov at all, because that's the day where separation, machloikas, was made. So therefore there's twice Ki Tov on this day, both for this day as well as for the previous day. The 4th day of the week, Wednesday, is the day that the 2 great luminaries, the sun and the moon, were suspended, hung up in the sky to shine, which is again a hint to the idea of the moon and the sun being similar, as it's going to be when Mashiach comes, before the moon becomes smaller, when Vayas Elokim is Shnei HaMoedes HaGdolim, the Eibishter made both great luminaries. Furthermore, the Rebbe says, when you have both of these things together coming Tuesday and Wednesday, Gimel and Daled, the 3rd and the 4th day of the week, Gimel and Daled makes God. What does the word God mean? God means Mazel Tov, good luck, as Rashi explains in Chumash. which this emphasizes even more the idea that Adar has especially healthy and good mazel. And again, this is connected with the birth of Moshe on the 7th day of Adar. And the Rebbe says this too is hinted in the Gimel and Daled, the 3 and 4, the 3rd day and the 4th day of the week coming together. 3 and 4, of course, equals 7. That means that Moshe Rabbeinu's birth on the 7th day of Adar causes that the whole month of Adar should have an extra special, healthy, good mazel. And this is already included in the 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, the 3rd day of the week, the 4th day of the week. 3 and 4 equals 7. And God being a good mazel, right from Rosh Chodesh, we have this mazel in the greatest and the best way. Says the Rebbe in Seif Hey, to explain this whole idea of the Yid's mazel becoming stronger because of Moshe Rabbeinu's birth in the month of Adar, to explain it a little bit more and deeper. So the Rebbe explains what is this level called mazel when we speak about Yidden. So the Rebbe says it's known that the neshama, the way it came down into this world, it's only a small part of the neshama, only a little reflection, a little bit of the neshama that comes down into this world. Most of the neshama remains up above, and that is the part that's called mazel. And the Rebbe brings a few Maimorei Chazal, which speaks about the idea of mazel. Adam isle mazlo, that a person has a mazel. V'hakol toli b'mazel, everything is up to the mazel. What do we mean over here, mazel? The Rebbe is explaining it's referring to the level of the neshama that's too high and too great to come down into the guf. But at the same time, mazel is also from the word noisel, means it's dripping down. It causes and is bringing down a flow of energy and life for the person down here. The fact that the Chazal say Ein Mazel Yisrael, that you don't have mazel, that's referring to something else. That's referring to the sun, the moon, the planets, the stars, all of the different malachim and so on and so forth, which is the things that Goyim are more related to. Yidden are higher than these mazolis, but Yidden have their own mazel. And on the contrary, the mazel of the Yidden is so much higher than all these other mazolis. And the Rebbe says this is another pshat in the word Ein Mazel Yisrael. That the ayin, the level called ayin. In other words, ayin means nothing, but it also means that which is beyond our understanding, that which is beyond our knowledge. As the pasuk says, "Va'achachma me ayin timotzi." Chachma is coming from ayin. So this is a level that's beyond understanding. This is the mazel of the Yid. This is the higher level of the neshama that's beyond seichel and higher than the coming into the body of the Yid. And in fact, this is what gives the Yid that koyach to have a mesiras nefesh, which is higher than seichel. Says the Rebbe, this idea is also emphasized in the birth of Moshe in the month of Adar, which, as we said before, also represents the birth of all of the Yidden, because Moshe, Yisrael, Moshe and the Yidden are one. Because what happens when a child is born? When a child is born, in the meantime, he doesn't have a name yet. So right now, we're dealing with the essence of the child, the way he is higher than a name. And it also hints to the etzem haneshama that's higher than all of the different names that the neshama has. Usually we say there's 5 names. Nefesh, ruach, neshama, chaya, yechida, but the essence of the Yid is higher even than the yechida, because even yechida is only a name for the essence of the neshama. And that's exactly what we mean, that Chodesh Adar has a especially strong mazel for the Yid. What we're saying is that this is the time that the etzem haneshama, the very essence of the Yid, that level of ayin, is becoming strengthened in the month of Adar with this especially healthy and strong mazel. Says the Rebbe, now we could also understand the special connection between the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu and Purim. As we say, Haman didn't know that Moshe Rabbeinu was born on Zayin Adar, and eventually this led to the whole concept and the Yom Tov of Purim. So the Rebbe says we know that all of the days that the Yidden were in that danger from Gzeiras Haman, they were all standing with a tremendous Mesiras Nefesh. At every given moment they were ready to give up their life to be killed, and not Chas V'Sholem to give up Yiddishkeit, to give up the Eibush to Chas V'Sholem. And the Rebbe explains, this is the idea of Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. Because if they would have wanted to give up Yiddishkeit, then Haman wouldn't have bothered them at all. His whole Gzeira was only on the Yehudim, those that are denouncing and denying Avodah Zarah and only going along with Hashem. And yet the Yidden are Moiser Nefesh, the Yidden are giving up their lives, they're prepared to die at any given moment, and Chas V'Sholem don't even entertain a thought to give up Yiddishkeit. The koyach for all of this is by the essence of their neshama being revealed. So that's what Purim is all about. It's about the essence of the neshama being revealed, Mesiras Nefesh, which is exactly the same point of what Moshe Rabbeinu's birth represents in the month of Adar. As we just said before, that the birth of Moshe represents the revelation of the essence of the deepest part of every single Yid. In fact, birth itself, birth of Moshe, the word later, the Rebbe says, also means is revealed. In other words, this is the time that the essence of every Yid comes out. Says the Rebbe, we could explain that this is also hinted in the words of the Gemara that Adar has a bori v'tokif mazle, especially healthy and strong mazel. That means to say that the mazel of the Yid is especially strong and strengthened, similar to the idea of a Gavar Yisrael, and the Rebbe explains what that means. Since in the month of Adar, the mazel of the Yid becomes stronger, what becomes revealed is that deepest level of the essence of the neshama, the ayin. So that itself is revealing that strength of the Yid, the strength of the etzem haneshama, that is the pintel Yid, that deepest Yiddish spark inside of every single Yid, that has the koyach to be moiser nefesh, that strength to give up one's life for the sanctity of the Eibishter's name. Says the Rebbe, this idea, the strength of the neshama that comes out in the month of Adar, is also hinted in the word Adar itself. The word Adar, the Rebbe explains, actually means strength. There's actually a Gemara that says, one who wants that his properties should last, he should plant an Adar, plant a tree that's called by this name. And the Gemara uses the pasuk as a support, Adir Bamorim Hashem, speaking about Hashem, how he's mighty on high. In other words, that the whole idea of Adar is an expression of lasting, of strength, and that's why it's called Adar. In other words, the month of Adar emphasizes the strength of every single Yid. Yidden that are called Adirim, also called by this name, as the Gemara says elsewhere, Adirim Elu Yisrael. Adirim refers to Yidden, as the pasuk says, Va'adirei kol chefzi bam, which means to say that his mighty ones, Adirei, his mighty ones, is in who is all my delight. So in other words, the idea of Adir is all about strength. And the Rebbe brings also from the Mefarshim over there that Adar is referring to the strength of the Yidden, where they strengthen themselves in serving the Eibishter, and more specifically, as it says in Chassidus, the strength to have for Mesiras Nefesh, being Moiser Nefesh for Hashem Echad, in a way that's higher than Seichel. Says the Rebbe, now we could explain on another level what the Medrash said before. Adar ein lo yischus, Adar doesn't have a schus, and the Mazel doesn't have a schus. So now the Rebbe explains it, that after we know that in Adar Moshe Rabbeinu is born, and we now understand that because of that the Mazel of the Yid in Chodesh Adar is on a completely higher level. So now we read it, not that Adar ein lo yischus, Adar doesn't have a schus, rather Adar ayin lo yischus, the ayin itself, this level that's higher than Seichel, this level of the neshama, the essence of the neshama, the way it's higher than the neshama that's in the body, etc., this itself is the schus for Chodesh Adar and for its mazel. Again, just to repeat or to recap some of the main points that we've been learning, the Rebbe is explaining about the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu in Chodesh Adar, how it affects the whole of Chodesh Adar and all of the Yidden, because Moshe hu Yisrael. We're also explaining that the mazel of Chodesh Adar is something higher than all of the other months. And this is the pshat ein lo yischus, that Adar doesn't have a schus, doesn't mean doesn't have a schus, but rather that the schus itself of Adar is a kind of mazel. Doesn't have a schus, and a mazel is all about from the level of ayin, which represents and is hinting to the essence of the neshama that's higher than seichel and higher than coming into the body. The Rebbe says in Ivov, to explain more the connection now to the birth of Moshe to the 7th day of Adar. The 7th day of Adar represents, in a sense, the whole shleimus of the Chodesh Adar. In other words, we have 7 consecutive days, then all days of the week, in other words. Within the month of Adar, we had 7 days, so we already cover every single day of the week, the 7 days with which the Eibishter created the world, as they are in Chodesh Adar. So that, in other words, is telling us that in a certain sense we have in Chodesh Adar, we have already any sort of given situation. We have all that strength of Adir B'Morim Hashem, of the strength of the Eibishter, had already permeated to every aspect of the world, to every aspect of Adar. The Rebbe says the word Adar itself also hints to this idea that the Eibishter is coming down into every aspect of the world. How is that? Adar is spelled Aleph and Daled Reish. The Aleph is a hint to the Eibishter, the Alufei Shaloilam, the one who's the master over the world. The Dar means, it's an expression of Dira, that the Eibishter is having this Dira B'tachtoinim dwelling down here in this world. And even more so on Zayin Adar, which Zayin, as we said, the seventh day, represents all the 7 days of creation. That means to say that the Eibishter is coming down into the Dira and in every aspect of the creation in all 7 days. This is even more emphasized when we look at Moshe Rabbeinu's achievement and what he has done throughout his life, which is of course all included in the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu and Zayin Adar. And Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that put up the Mishkan, bringing down Gili Elikus for the whole world. And as the Medrash says, that when Rosh Chodesh Nisan came along, the Eibishter commanded to build a Mishkan. The Eibishter sent a message through Moshe Rabbeinu because the Yidden were a bit hesitant. They said that we made the Mishkan, when is the Shekhinah going to come and rest in our work, in what we have done? So the Eibishter sent a message through Moshe Rabbeinu that Basi Legani Achoisi Kala, that I have already come down to my garden, referring to the Yidden as Achoisi Kala, my sister, my bride. Amar Rabbi Shmuel b'Rabbi Yossi. It doesn't say over here Legan, rather it says Legani. It's referring to my special place, the place where I was originally, because where else was the Shekhinah initially, if not down here in this world? But of course, when Adam Rishon sinned, the Shekhinah went up from the first, from this world up to the first heaven, and then eventually, after more Aveiros, till finally the Aveira of the Egyptians, the Mitzrayim, went up to the 7th heaven. Then came along 7 tzaddikim and brought the Shekhinah down into this world, starting with Avraham Avinu from the 7th to the 6th, and finally Moshe Rabbeinu, which Kol HaShvi, that he's the 7th, and Kol HaShvi and Chavivin, all 7th are especially beloved, brought the Shekhinah down from the highest world, from the higher worlds, down the Tachtoinim to this lowest world. Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that brought it down, La'aretz, down to earth. Just want to point out a very interesting a very interesting footnote over here, that while the Medrash that the Rebbe brought in the Sikha was in the name of Rabbi Shmuel b'Rabbi Yossi, in the Medrash, in another Medrash, the Rebbe says in 81, the Medrash actually says it was Amar Rab Menachem was the one that said it. Rab Menachem, the son-in-law of Rabbi Elazar bar Avuna, in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yosna. And the Rebbe says over here a beautiful thing, which is of course very strongly hinting, of course, to our own time and to the Rebbe and so on. The Rebbe says that by the fact that it says that who is the one that said it, Amar Rab Menachem, the Rebbe says, Yesh Shloima, we could say that this is actually hinting to the ultimate Hashroas HaShekhinah, the way the Shekhinah is going to come down through Mashiach, Goyel Rishon, which is also Goyel Achroin, whose name is Menachem. The name of Mashiach is Menachem, so therefore we have the hint of the Shekhinah coming down here into this world through Mashiach, whose name is Menachem. Says the Rebbe further in the Sikha. We know that the beginning of the putting up of the Mishkan, there was something called Shiva Simei Amiluim, 7 days of dedicating and preparing for the work in the Mishkan. Moshe Rabbeinu was setting up the Mishkan every day for 7 days and taking it apart. So this is in the very last days, the 7 last days of the month of Adar, starting from Chav Gimel Adar all the way to the end of Adar. So the Rebbe says now we have 2 parts of Adar. We have Moshe Rabbeinu and Zayin Adar being born, and then we have the last 7 days of Adar preparing the Mishkan. And the Rebbe explains, in the beginning of the month of Adar, what's mainly emphasized is the strength. The Adir, we said, is from the word of strength, Adir B'Morim Hashem. We're more focused on the idea of the Aleph of Adar. In other words, the way Hashem is higher than the world. Adir B'Morim Hashem, Hashem is up on high. Then we have the continuation of the month. First of all, of course, Moshe Rabbeinu being born. And then, of course, all of his avodah, and finally at the end of the month, in the very last week, where Moshe Rabbeinu is setting up the Mishkan. Here what's emphasized is mainly the Daled Reish part of Adar, the fact that the Eibishter's Dar is dwelling down here in this world through the Mishkan. Nevertheless, Even at the very end of the month of Adar, where the Mishkan is actually set up already, Moshe Rabbeinu put up the Mishkan, and he's serving in the Mishkan, and so on and so forth. In the meantime, the Shekhinah was not dwelling in it yet. In other words, it was not so much coming down to shine in this world. It was still Adar B'Morim Hashem, Hashem shining up in the heavens, because the Gilui, the revelation, was still higher than this world. And finally, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, is the time when the Shekhinah came down in a more permanent way on the 8th day of the Miluim, and then continuing in the 12 days of the Nesiim bringing their karbonis, their special karbonis of dedication, from Rosh Chodesh Nisan until the 12th day of Nisan, each Nasi bringing another day. The Rebbe says this emphasizes even more so the idea of bringing Elikus all the way into the world. And the Rebbe explains the significance of the number 12, because we're just speaking about the 12 days of Nisan, when all the Nesiim were bringing their karbonis to finalize the bringing down of the Shekhinah into this world. And the Rebbe mentions a number of things regarding 12. First of all, the Rebbe says that there's 12 different combinations in Shem Havaya. The name Yudke Vavke, which means that the Rebbe is just creating the world, has 12 different combinations through which time itself is made. So that represents that Elikus came down into the Gedorim, into the boundaries, and into the definitions of time itself. We also have the 12 months of the year, as well as space is also related to the concept of 12, a concept in Kabbalah called Yud Beis Gevulei Alachsoin, which we won't get into right this second. But that means to say is that even within the world, within the parameters of the world, with all the different details of the world, within the Yud Beis, the idea of 12, again representing both time and space, into all of this is coming down the level of Elikus as it's higher than the world, because that's exactly what Chodesh Nisan is all about. Nisan is also from the word of Nes, and Nisim, miracle of miracles, and so on and so forth, but bringing down all of these things, the greatest levels of Elikus, into our own world. Just want to point out an interesting footnote, Ha'ara 92, which seems to be very strongly, Merame is hinting to the Rebbe's own birthday on Yud Aleph Nisan. And the Rebbe says, we just spoke about the idea that there's the 12 days of Nisan which sort of bring down finally the Shekhinah all completely. But the Rebbe says, when does the Mishkan completed after all these 12 days on the 12th day? That means after we had 11 days. 11 represents the level that is higher than the 10. 10 is usually the spheroids. 11 represents the level of Elikus, which is higher than Elikus. And this level of 11, the way it's higher than the world, is coming down into the world, into all the details of the world. And it's again the same idea that we've been speaking about before, bringing down these highest levels of Elikus into the world. Says the Rebbe in Siv Zayin. So too when we speak about the fact that the Yidden are especially, their mazel is especially strong in the month of Adar. This too is connected with the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu is born, and specifically on Zayin Adar, the 7th day of Adar. The Rebbe says, when we say that the mazel of the Yidden are especially strong in the month of Adar, we're not only speaking about the way the neshama is up there above the level of the mazel, but also as the neshama is coming down here into this world and into the guf. As we said before, the word mazel also means noisel, it's dripping down, coming down from above down here below. And therefore, the month of Adar, the mazel of the month of Adar, is also affecting and strengthening the Yid as he is in a neshama inside a physical body, also as he is involved in worldly things. As this too is emphasized in the 7th day of Adar, which as we said before, is hinting on making the door, the dira, the dwelling place for Hashem, for the Aleph, for Hashem, in the 7th day of Adar, in the 7 days of the week, the 7 days of creation. In other words, even though the mazel refers to that level of the essence of the neshama, the way it's higher than the body, or the level that we call ayin, something that's beyond us, something that's not understood, representing that strength of Mesiras Nefesh, which is higher than intellect. Nevertheless, we're not speaking about going out of the world, leaving the world with Mesiras Nefesh in the literal sense, but on the contrary, taking that Mesiras Nefesh and that itself, bringing it down into all matters of our avodah in the world to make the world a dira b'tachtoinim. And as the Gemara says, if a person has a court case with a goy, he should try to make sure it's in Chodesh Adar, that it has, because it has a healthy mazel. In other words, that this mazel, this healthy mazel of the Yid, is not only concerning matters of the neshama, matters of Torah and mitzvahs, but even matters of the world, even when you're dealing with a non-Jew. And the Rebbe says this too is emphasized, of course, in the whole idea of Purim. What happened Purim? Haman's Gzeira was nullified. And the Yidden did not have to have practically Mesiras Nefesh and give up their lives, Chaz v'Shalom, in order not to give up Yiddishkeit. And on the contrary, they overcame their enemies. And all the fear of the Yidden was upon the Goyim. And therefore they're able to continue doing Torah and mitzvahs in the most comfortable way possible. Oyra v'simcha v'sosin v'yikar in the literal sense, and also as the Chazal tell us, the various different ruchniistic things that it refers to. And the Yidden were able to have simcha and mishta, joy and happiness and yom tov, etc. in all 127 countries of the king. And in a way where Mordechai becomes a second in command to Achashverosh. Nevertheless, says the Rebbe, the Nes of Purim and Chodesh Adar was still in a way where we are still servants of Achashverosh, as the Gemara uses that expression. In other words, even after the Geula of Purim, Yidden are still in Golus. And not only that, we had the Churban of the second Beis HaMikdash, this very long and bitter Golus, with all of the terrible decrees and Holocaust, Rachmana litzlan, Hoya le'yisiyah, which surely will never happen again. But all of these things that we had in previous generations, up until this generation, where so many thousands upon thousands, myriads of Yidden were Moiser Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. So in other words, Yidden in the time of Golus are still in a situation where we need to have this strength of the Etzem HaNeshama, this extra strong mazel, to have Mesiras Nefesh for Echad, for Hashem Echad, which is basically a sort of motion of being higher than the world. Adar B'Morim Hashem, it's still more about the Aleph, in a sense, being higher than the world. The greatest and most complete Gilui of Alikus in the world will be in the third Beis HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash that Hashem himself makes, which will be by the third Gul, as the Pasuk also says, by Yom HaShlishi Yikmenu V'Nichyi Lefanav, when we will have the eternal Beis HaMikdash, the eternal Geula after which there is no Golus. And this specifically is Shayach to Chodesh Nisan. Again, as opposed to Chodesh Adar, which still in a sense is in some way connected to a Golus, Chodesh Nisan is the idea, where Ben Nisan Nigalu Yidden were redeemed in Nisan. And in Nisan Yidden will be redeemed, as the Pasuk says, Kimeitzeis Chom Eretz Mitzrayim Alen the Flois. And this is the day when this is the month when the Mishkan was set up, including also the third Beis HaMikdash, and when the Shekhinah finally was dwelling down here in this world. So the Rebbe now explains in Seif Ches and how we could start understanding the connection of Zayin Adar with Parshas Tetzaveh, which we said Zayin Adar is also the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu. We said this is the time when Moshe Rabbeinu's mazel is strengthened, and by extension the mazel of all the Yidden have a strong and healthy mazel, that strength to even have Mesiras Nefesh. And all of this is hinted in Parshas Tetzaveh. And the Rebbe goes through the first pasuk in the following way. The pasuk says, "V'yata Tetzaveh es b'nei Yisrael, you will command the Yidden, v'yikcho elech Hashem and zayizach, they will bring to you pure olive oil, kasis lamor, crushed, for the luminary, lahalos ner tamid, to shine in an everlasting way." And the Rebbe explains the words in this pasuk. Ata refers to Moshe Rabbeinu, and the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu, even higher than any name. And as we said before, this is the essence of the neshama, the mazel that's higher than a name. The vav, vi'ata, represents the concept of something being drawn down, similar to the actual shape of the vav, where something is coming down from higher up, lower down, meaning to say that it's dripping down, coming down from the essence, from the mazel of Moshe, to come down to the Yidden. Tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael means Moshe Rabbeinu is connected with every single Yid. The word Tetzaveh is an expression of joining and connection. So that every single Yid is also standing with this strength and with this health to have this greatest level of their essence and neshama revealed. The pasuk continues that through this, v'yikchu elecha, shemen zayizach kasis lamor, they'll have this pure olive oil, which is crushed and brings out the more, the luminary, the greatest level. The Rebbe says this is all a hint for the idea of Mesiras Nefesh. The Razal tell us that the zayis, the olive, is moiser nefesh, for the Kedushas Hashem, for the sanctity of the Eibishter's name, and that is what it means, Kosis Lamoir. Yidden are compared to an olive that only produces its oil when you crushed it. In a similar way, the Yidden are banged around and knocked around by the Goyim from place to place. They have all the pain and the suffering of Golus, but that itself is strengthening their etzem haneshama, the idea of the oil, the pure oil, which comes out to shine. And the Rebbe explains what's oil. We know that oil, even if you mix it with all other liquids, it always remains on top. Zach, pure, it remains without sediment. And Lamoir represents the source of the light, even higher than light. And then the pasuk includes Lahalois ner tamid, that just like the oil brings light, in a similar way the Beis HaMikdash brings light for the whole world. As the pasuk says, V'holchu goyim la'oirech, Yidden will go by your... V'holchu goyim la'oirech, that the goyim will go by the light of the Yidden. And that's why the Yidden are called Zayis Rana, like a fresh olive, because they bring light to everybody else. In other words, the whole purpose is not about Mesiras Nefesh to leave the world, but on the contrary, that Moshe Rabbeinu and the Yidden, the Adar, Tetzaveh, Bnei Yisrael, and the essence of the Neshama, all come down and shine in the world, similar to the idea of Moshe Rabbeinu being born on the 7th day of Adar, which is all about that the mazel of Moshe Rabbeinu and the Yidden are being drawn down and shining into the 7 days of the week, the 7 days of the world. So too says the Rebbe at the end of the Parsha. The Parsha, towards the end of the Parsha we had about building the Mizbeach for the Ktoiros, and how the Ktoiros needs to be brought every single morning when the Neiros, when the candles of the Menorah are set up, and when the candles are lit, you also need to bring the Ktoiros. What's the idea of Ktoiros? The word Ktoiros in Aramaic actually means a bond and a connection, a knot. In other words, this is the knot, the connection between the Yid and the Eibishter, as the expression B'chad Ketiris Katana, that a Yid and the Eibishter are all one, but again shining in the world, similar to the candles and through the candles. Says the Rebbe in Sif Tes, based on all of this, we can now explain the two reasons why in Parshas Tetzaveh Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not mentioned. We said the two reasons were because Moshe Rabbeinu passed away in the month of Adar, in Zayin Adar, and because he said, erase me from your Sefer, and how these two things are connected to each other. The reason why Moshe Rabbeinu's name is not specified in Parshas Tetzaveh, and we said it's next to Zayin Adar, is not only because Moshe Rabbeinu passed away in the month of Adar, which is represented by the fact that we take away Moshe's name from the Parsha, but even more so connected to the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was born in Zayin Adar, and as we said before, that wipes away the negative trace of the Misa. Because the birth of Moshe Rabbeinu in Zayin Adar represents the revelation of the essence of the Neshama, the essence of Moshe, even higher than a name. And that's why he's not even called by a name yet, by the name Moshe, and in the whole Parsha he's not called by the name. Rather, V'ato, he's being referred to as you, the very essence of Moshe, and in fact, related to the very essence of Hashem himself. And since the birth of Moshe, which we just said means the essence of Moshe, the way it's higher than a name, on Zayin Adar, is connected to all the Yidden, because as we said, Moshe is Yisrael. That means that the Etzem and Neshama of all the Yidden are especially strong. And as emphasized in the beginning of the Parsha, that the Ata, the essence of Moshe, and the essence of Hashem, is in a way of V'ata, which we said, which means it's drawn down into this world, and is connected to Tetzaveh with the essence of every Yid. Therefore, what else is hinted in this Parsha is that the Parsha, when we read close to Zayin Adar, we are also speaking about the Mesiras Nefesh that Moshe Rabbeinu has for the Yidden. In other words, we're speaking about the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu, the way it's even higher than Torah. What does he say? He's asking that because on behalf of the Yidden, his name should be erased from the Torah. And his name is not mentioned. Rather, what's mentioned? The Ato, the essence of Moshe that's higher than a name. And this is emphasized even in a more revealed way by the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu was born in Zayin Adar, meaning to say that the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu, the essence of every Yid, the way they're one with the essence of Hashem, that's what's being revealed. The Rebbe says, now we can understand that the reason of Mechenin HaMesifrecha, that Moshe Rabbeinu asks for his name to be erased, is connected to the idea of Zayin Adar, which we read close to Parshas Tetzaveh. The day that Moshe Rabbeinu is born, which we just said means the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu coming out, which is connected to the essence of every single Yid. because this is the true reason for his Mesiras Nefesh, for all of the Yidden, by saying Mecheini na Masifrecha, and as a result of that his name is not mentioned in Parshas Tetzaveh, which we read close to the day of his birth. And in fact, not only we don't mention his name, but we're speaking about Vi'ata, we're speaking about the very essence of Moshe Rabbeinu himself. So in other words, to summarize it, to recap maybe, the main point over here is that we're not only looking at the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu passed away and that's why his name is not being mentioned. Adar, on the contrary, we're speaking about the fact that he was born and that this is the essence of Moshe Rabbeinu, even higher than a name, and that this is connected to his Mesiras Nefesh for the Yidden, and why his name is being erased from the Torah. And in fact, what we're looking at now is not his name, but is the essence which is higher than a name. Says the Rebbe in Sif Yud. But in order to understand Sif Yud, just important to mention that the Sikh is coming in connection to a terrible, terrible tragedy that had happened in Crown Heights just before this. And the Rebbe was speaking over here about the murder of Mrs. Lapine. This is Pesha Leah Lapine. And the Rebbe speaks about it now in the next few paragraphs. The Rebbe says in Seif Yud, all of this that we said before, about the common theme between the birth of Moshe and Zayin Adar and Parshas Tetzaveh, that both of these represent the essence of the Yid, that a Yid has the strength to be Moser Nefesh for the sanctity of the Eibishter's name, is all emphasized even more so in something that had just occurred very recently in this neighborhood, a situation of Kiddush Hashem Barabim by a Yiddish woman. The Rebbe says, by first prefacing, that we know that Eini Tanu Yudeya Admo, which means to say none of us could really understand, and we don't want to understand why this all took place. Why did Hashem cause this to happen? Especially when we're speaking about a young woman, a mother of young little children which need their mother and are going to miss her. But the Rebbe says we cannot elaborate about these sorts of things of complaints against the Eibishter. Famous pasuk that too much words could chas v'sholom lead to negative things. You should keep your words very few. But nevertheless, we need to emphasize this great union of a Kiddush Hashem Barabim in public that happened over here, and most importantly, to scream out to the Eibishter about the length of the Golus Ad Mosai, and to demand of the Eibishter, and to do whatever could be done that the Geula should come immediately through Mashiach Tzidkenu. When there will be a Kitzu Verananu Sheikh Neyofer, there will be Tchias HaMesim, starting with the Tzaddikim that get up immediately, and amongst them, and right in the beginning, also this Tzaddikus that was killed al Kiddush Hashem, the Teikef Miyad, immediately should once again meet as a Neshama Beguf with her family and her children, and to be able to continue to educate them and to raise them l'toyru, l'chupal, l'maisim toivim, mitoich simcha v'tuv levav. And the Rebbe says in Sif Yudala, first and foremost, the great Kiddush Hashem Barabim that happened over here. It is known what the Chazal tell us in a number of places about the great, amazing schus and reward for Kiddush Hashem, especially something in public. And even more emphasizing the Kiddush Hashem Barabim when it's in this neighborhood, a place where there's the shul and the Beis Medrash, and place of Maisim Tovim, this triple holy house of Kvoid Kedushas Moiri V'cham Yadmur Nesidei Reinu, referring of course to 770, which all of this makes the Kiddush Hashem Barabim even more powerful and stronger. To speak even more and to clarify even more the great union of a Kiddush Hashem, we find regarding the Beis Yosef, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, that because of his very, very high and great level, he was deserving that the Eibusha should give him the schus to have Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. For some reason, something happened then that wasn't exactly according to his own level. He was punished, and he was not zoiche to give up his life for Kiddush Hashem, and it was considered a punishment. Even though later he went ahead and he had the schus to make the Shulchan Aruch and to paskin for Yidden for all future generations, and yet we say that was still only part of it was a punishment that he didn't have Kiddush Hashem. So in other words, the fact that he made the Shulchan Aruch is not as great as his Mesiras Nefesh on Kiddush Hashem would have been. The Rebbe says, this is also connected, of course, to what we were speaking before about Moshe Rabbeinu saying that his name should be erased from the Torah. Here again we have the idea that Moshe Rabbeinu's Mesiras Nefesh for the Yidden is higher than his connection to what he has to Torah. He's giving up, so to speak, on his schus to be written in the Torah by saying I should be erased from the Torah, from all of Torah, because of his Mesiras Nefesh for the Yidden. Similar to the idea of the Shulchan Aruch, that authoring the Shulchan Aruch still does not come to the greatness of Mesiras Nefesh for Kiddush Hashem. Says the Rebbe, in addition to the great union of any sort of Kiddush Hashem Barabim, which is the general idea of Mesiras Nefesh, this is even more emphasized by the Mesiras Nefesh of a young woman, a mother for little children, because besides for her own Mesiras Nefesh, in a sense she's giving away, being Moiser, also her little children, by leaving them, giving them up, by knowing the great yearning that her children will have for her, giving up their education, their chinuch. So this Mesiras Nefesh is even a greater Mesiras Nefesh than her own Mesiras Nefesh. And therefore this is considered a Mesiras Nefesh on top of a Mesiras Nefesh. Says the Rebbe in Yud Beis, but notwithstanding all of these greatest inyanim of Kiddush Hashem Barabim, since we were Yoitza already without a question, more than enough, Mesiras Nefesh on Kiddush Hashem through all of the terrible things that happened in this bitter Golus and this long Golus, up until this generation, so Yidden scream out to the Eibishter, Ad Mosai. How is it possible that after all of this bitter Golus, we still need some sort of Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem of a young woman, of a mother, of little children? Even if the Eibishter wants to have Nachas Ruach from Mesiras Nefesh. So in addition to the fact that we were Yoitza Mesiras Nefesh for so many generations previously, so it's enough the Mesiras Nefesh from the fact that the Yidden are another moment in Golus. Yidden are in Golus for already over 1900 years. Mashiach still didn't come yet. We finished all the avoid in the time of Golus, and we did so many things in all possible ways, including the Simcha of the month of Adar for 60 days. And we don't know what else could be done. And yet another week passes, another day passes, another moment passes, and still the Geula Amitis Vashlema did not come b'poil mamish. And not only that, such an absolute terrible thing happens that there can be within Golus itself such a terrible thing that a Yiddish woman, a Yiddish mother of little children, has to be Moshe Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. The Rebbe says the only comfort we could take from this is that this should be the last such incident of Mesiras Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem. And more importantly than the schus of this tzaddik that was Moshe Nefesh al Kiddush Hashem, together with the merit of all Yiddish tzidkonius and all the generations, till the Neshei Yisrael HaTzidkoniyos, the tzaddikison of healthy neshamas and healthy bodies in this generation, we will be zoiche immediately to Geula Amitis Vashlema, similar to the time of Yetzias Mitzrayim, which happened in the merit of the Noshim Tzidkoniyos, and so too by the future Geula, which will be immediately in the schus of the Noshim Tzidkoniyos of the generation. And then we'll have the ultimate Kiddush Hashem, the ultimate sanctity of the Eibishter's name, which is a general idea, because generally the whole idea of Golus is the opposite of a Kiddush Hashem. The Pasuk says, Shmi HaGodol HaMechulo BaGoyim. My name is being desecrated by the Goyim. What is this Chilul? Rashi explains. The fact that the enemies could come along and say that Chas v'Sholem, that the Eibishter didn't have the ability to be able to save his people and his nation and his land. So what's the Kiddush Hashem? The Kiddush Hashem happens through the Geula. As the Pasuk continues speaking about how the Eibishter says, my name will be sanctified, and the Goyim will know that I am Hashem. When I sanctify, when I become sanctified in front of your eyes, by taking the Yidden and gathering them from all the countries and bringing them to their own land, the Eibishter says, that's the way I'll become greater and sanctified, and all the Goyim will know that I am Hashem. Concludes the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says the Hoirah from all of the above, B'negei la'avodah b'poil. The Rebbe says, coming from Zayin Adar, which is in Parshas Tetzaveh, which both of them emphasize the strength of the mazel of a Yid, the strength of the etzem hanashama, the essence of a Yid, as it comes down into the world, not Mesiras Nefesh going out of the world, chas v'sholem, but rather neshamas and physical bodies for many happy and healthy long years. We need to add and we need to increase, and with extra chayas in all of our activities in learning Torah and doing mitzvahs, specifically spreading Torah and Yiddishkeit and Chassidus to the outside in order to bring about b'poyel u'begilui, the Geula Amitis Vashlema through Mashiach Tzidkein, which then will be the greatest revelation of the essence of the Yid, as the Yidden and Hashem are all one, will be revealed in the whole world, which will become a dira for the Eibishter down here in this world. To put it in a little bit of different words, the Avodah of Chodesh Adar, which is especially strong and healthy mazel, is about bringing about the Geula Amitis Vashlema through Mashiach Tzidkeinu, which is also called Adir, as in the Pasuk V'hoya Adirim Imenu, which then it will be revealed in the whole world. The mazel of the Yid, that the Yidden are called Adirim, together with the Eibishter, which is called Adir B'Amorim Hashem, which will be revealed in the whole world, which will become a Dira for the Eibishter. The Rebbe says in Yudalid, this will become even more Geshmak when we look at the Parshiyas that we read in the Torah in the month of Adar, and the year that the Rebbe is saying the Sikha in the 2 months of Adar, how they're all connected to the building of the Mishkan, which the Shleim is the ultimate perfection of that will be in the third Beis HaMikdash, from which light comes out to the whole world. And of course, the whole world becoming a place for the Eibishter, similar to the Beis HaMikdash. And the Rebbe now goes through the next few Parshiyas, or these few Parshiyas and the next few Parshiyas. First of all, we have Terumat Tetzaveh, when the Yidden are being commanded for all the work of the Mishkan. The Big Day Kahuna, the dedication through the Yemei HaMiluim, including the idea of Asur Migdash Shechanti B'Soicham, and eventually the Nigdash B'Chvedi L'Shachni B'Soicham, of the Eibishter resting and dwelling amongst the Yidden. Parshas Kisisa, the Rebbe says, Kisisa es Rosh B'nai Yisrael, lifting up, counting or lifting up the heads of the Yidden as a remez on the greatest Aliyah, lifting of the head of the Yidden, which will be by the Gula Mitzvah Shlema through Mashiach Tzidkenu after the tremendous Churban and Galus. Vayakel Pekudei is the Yidden actually fulfilling the work of the Mishkan and the Big Dikuna and setting up the Mishkan practically, which is of course also hinting to the Shleimus of the third Beis HaMikdash. And Pekudei HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdos, which literally is referring to counting, enumerating the various things of the Mishkan, but it's also a remez to the Beis HaMikdash that was taken away through 2 Churbanos, as Rashi explains. Similar, Mishkan is also from the word mashkoin, similar to something that was taken away as a security, as a deposit, taken away and now being returned to its owner, because the third Beis HaMikdash is called Meshulish, is also triple, because it also has the advantages of the previous 2 Batei Mikdash and the Mishkan. And then there will also be the Vayakel, the ingathering of all of the Yidden, through the Goyal Rishon, Goyal Acharin, through Mashiach, and which is also the same neshama as Moshe Rabbeinu, as the pasuk says, Vayakel Moshe. Moshe gathers all of the Yidden, and there will also be the Pekudei, the counting, the 10th counting of all of the Bnei Yisrael. From there we move on to Parshas Vayikra. Vayikra el Moshe, Hashem calls out to Moshe Rabbeinu, and Hashem speaks to him. This is the calling out and the speech of Hashem, which Hashem speaks to every single Yid in a way that every Yid gets to know the Eibishter. Tzav. So once again, as Chazal explained, is the word tzav, which means command, but it's an expression of zirus, of doing so in haste, immediately, because immediately all of the inyanim of Parshas Tzav take place, including all of the chinuch, the dedication of the Mishkan in the 7 days, which started on Chav Gimel Adar, moving from there on to Parshas Shmini, the 8th day of the Miluim, in which the tefillah of Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron both come fulfilled, that Yinoyam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu, that the Eibishter's pleasantness should be revealed down here onto us. And as they said in the Tefillah, the Yiratzain, that the Shekhinah should dwell in the work of the Yidden. And the Rebbe says, via Shloimer, that on a leap year, so the Shleimus of the month of Adar is being emphasized, how great it is, and better in a sense, or greater than all of the other months of the year, also in the fact that we read these Parshiyas in the Torah, that also Parsha Shmini, which Parsha Shmini is speaking about how the Eibishter is already coming down into the Mishkan on Rosh Chodesh Nisan. But now we're reading it in Chodesh Adar. So then Chodesh Adar, we explained before, Adar, we said is more about the way the Gilui Elikus from above. Nisan, we said, is more about the way it's coming already into the world. But when you're reading Parsha Shmini in Chodesh Adar, that means in Chodesh Adar, you have already the advantages of Chodesh Nisan. Concludes the Rebbe in Sif Tetzaveh Yiratz, and most importantly, that we shouldn't have to wait the full 2 months for Chodesh Nisan. That in Chodesh Nisan Nigalu, the Yidden were redeemed in Nisan, and will be redeemed in Nisan, but already in the beginning of Chodesh Adar Rishon, and especially from Zion Adar, and its Shleimus when it comes to Shabbos of Yud Aleph Adar, which is a culmination of the whole week. So already there should be the Gula Mitzvah Shlema, the building of the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, and its dedication b'Poel Mamash. And to add that in a leap year, when you have 2 months of Adar, 60 days, then we are yearning for Chodesh Nisan, even more so, the month of the Gula of the Yidden. We're waiting for it for 60 days. And that itself hastens even more, brings about the Gilui of the Inyanim of Chodesh Nisan already in the beginning of the month of Adar. And all of this has a special advantage, because this year, Yud Aleph Nisan, is being is the conclusion of the Shnas HaTzadik, the Rebbe's 90th year, connected with Kapitel Tzadik, which comes after Kapitel Peites, which speaks about the Eibishter anointing David HaMelech, and concluding with Baruch Hashem La'olam Amen V'Amen. And Kapitel Tzadik we have the Noyam Hashem Elokeinu Amasi Yadeinu Koinaneu, which refers to the Shechina dwelling in the third Beis Hamikdash by the Yidden in this generation, completing all of the Avodah, because this is the 7th generation in which the activities of Moshe Rabbeinu are completed and concluded. The Goyal Rishon, the first Redeemer, was also the last Redeemer, by bringing down Elikus into the world, making it a Dir B'Tachtonim. V'chein ti alonu, and so too it should be by us, that on Yud Aleph Adar, 60 days before Yud Aleph Nisan, should already be completed all of the Inyanim of Yud Aleph Nisan. The Rebbe says on the 11th day of Nisan, we know is the Nasi of Bnei Asher. The Pasuk says, "May Asher Shmeina Lachmed," that from Asher specifically came very rich and fatty foods. The Toivil B'Hashem and Raglo, immersing his foot in oil, which is connected again to the beginning of Parshas Tetzaveh of taking pure olive oil. And also the beginning of Parshas Kisisa, which we start reading in Mincha. It also speaks about oil, which is again connected to the union of Mashiach, the pasuk that we said before, Matzasi David Avdi B'Shem and Karchi Meshachta, being anointed with oil. All of this is the Kisisa Es Rosh B'nai Yisrael, is mainly the uplifting and the anointing of the Rosh B'nai Yisrael, the Moshe Rabbeinu, the Goyal Rishon, the Goyal Acher, and anointing him as Melech HaMashiach, which will come and redeem us and take us, take it from Miyad Mamash.